This story is 100% fiction. All elements are imaginary. Coincidences with reality are accidental. But 18. Entertainment only. The picture frame shattered against the apartment wall, scattering glass across the cream carpet that Marcus had chosen. Marcus. Vivian Ashford grabbed another frame, the two of them in Santorini, perfect smiles, perfect lies, and hurled it with even more force. The sound of destruction was almost therapeutic. 4 years, $280,000 embezzled, and her digital signature on every goddamn transaction. Son of a bitch. She kicked the shards aside, her green silk dress, the one she'd bought for the engagement dinner that should have been happening at this very moment, stained with red wine. The bottle sat half empty on the kitchen counter. Her phone wouldn't stop buzzing. The hospital, the police, the lawyer she couldn't afford. Vivian ignored it all and poured herself another glass. Tomorrow she would be arrested. Tomorrow she would lose her medical license. Tomorrow, the career she'd built with blood and sleepless nights would turn to ashes. But tonight she was going to destroy every damn memory of Marcus Webb and drown herself in Cabernet. She was reaching for the third shelf of the cabinet, where she kept the love letters that now felt like sick jokes, when she heard it. The click. Subtle, metallic, unmistakable to anyone who'd worked trauma emergencies in Chicago. The sound of a gun being cocked. Vivian froze with her hand still raised. Dr. Ashford. The voice was low, controlled, devoid of any inflection that might indicate emotion. Turn around slowly. She turned, and for a moment, one single absurd moment, she thought maybe she'd drunk more than she realized, because the man standing in her living room doorway looked like he'd walked straight out of a movie she hadn't bought a ticket to see. Tall, broad shoulders beneath a black suit that cost more than her annual rent. A jawline cut at angles that defied common genetics. Eyes so dark green they appeared black in the dim apartment light, and completely empty of anything resembling humanity. Behind him, two equally intimidating men blocked the only exit. The gun in his hand was aimed directly at the center of her chest. Vivian should have been scared. She knew she should have been scared. But after the day she'd had, "If you're here to kill me," she said, lowering her hand slowly and picking up the wine glass from the counter. "Could you at least wait until I finish the bottle? Seems like a waste to die sober." The man didn't move a muscle, but something flickered through his eyes. So fast she almost missed it. Surprise, maybe. Or confusion. Good. She enjoyed confusing men who thought they could control her. "You're coming with me." It wasn't a question. Vivian took a sip of wine. "Am I?" "Yes. And if I say no?" The man tilted his head slightly. The gesture was almost feline, predatory. "Then I'll have to be less polite, Dr. Ashford. And neither of us wants that. You broke into my apartment." She gestured with her glass, spilling a few drops on the carpet. "Pointed a gun at me. And you're using the word polite with a straight face. Either you have a very particular sense of humor, or you're completely detached from reality." Silence. The two men behind him exchanged a look, the kind of look that said, "This never happens." The man in the suit, the leader clearly, holstered his gun beneath his jacket. The movement was fluid, practiced. He'd done this thousands of times before. "My name is Raphael Mancini." The name hit Vivian like a punch to the gut. Mancini. Everyone in Chicago knew that name. Everyone with more than 2 functioning brain cells knew the Mancinis were. "Oh shit. You're..." "Yes." He said the word as if it were obvious, as if she should have recognized him immediately. "And I have a problem that requires your specific skills, doctor. My brother took 3 bullets 40 minutes ago. One of them punctured his left lung and is lodged 2 centimeters from his heart. He'll be dead in less than an hour if he doesn't receive surgery." Vivian blinked. "And Chicago's hospitals are not an option." "Why not?" His eyes narrowed. "Because the men who shot my brother have people in every hospital in this city waiting to finish the job. I need a surgeon with no connections. One who can't be bought or threatened. One who has absolutely nothing left to lose." He glanced around the destroyed apartment, the shattered picture frames, the wine bottle, the ruined dress. "And from what I've observed over the past 10 minutes, Dr. Ashford, you fit the profile perfectly." Vivian let out a laugh, short, bitter. "You investigated me. Extensively. You know I'm about to be arrested." "I do. And you thought that made me what? Desperate enough to operate on a mobster in some filthy basement and pray I don't get executed afterward?" Raphael Mancini took a step forward, then another, until he was close enough for her to catch his scent, something woody, expensive, completely inappropriate for the situation. I don't kill doctors who save my family, Dr. Ashford. His voice was low, almost intimate. I reward them, generously. The kind of generosity that makes $280,000 debts disappear. The kind that turns criminal charges into lost paperwork. The kind that gives a brilliant surgeon a second chance she could never get on her own. Vivian's fingers tightened around the glass. You're blackmailing me. I'm offering you a deal. With a gun. The gun's been put away. He raised his hand slightly, showing his empty palms. Now it's just a conversation. A conversation that ends with me in a car with 3 mobsters heading God knows where. A conversation that ends with you saving the life of a 22-year-old kid who did nothing wrong except be born into the wrong family. Raphael's eyes finally showed something. A crack in the perfect control. My brother, Dr. Ashford, my younger brother. The only family I have left. Vivian felt something tighten in her chest. Damn medical instinct. What kind of wound exactly? 3 shots from a .45 caliber. One went through his right shoulder, that one's superficial. The second hit his left flank. Through and through, no major organ damage. The third, Raphael paused. The third is in his chest. Hemop pneumothorax. My personal physician drained what he could, but the bullet needs to be surgically removed. Vivian frowned. You have a personal physician? Had. He died 20 minutes ago trying to stabilize my brother when the Zanettis attacked again. The Zanettis, another family. Territorial war. Vivian had read about it in the papers, always reported as gang violence for public consumption. She should say no. She should scream for help. She should do anything a sensible person would do. But the sensible version of Vivian had died that afternoon, when she'd seen the bank transfers bearing her digital signature. If I do this, she said slowly, and your brother survives, can you really make the charges go away? I have 3 federal judges on the payroll, Dr. Ashford. I can do much more than that. And if he dies? Raphael Mancini was silent for a long moment. If my brother dies, he said finally, his voice stripped of all emotion, I will destroy everyone who contributed to it. But you? If you do everything in your power and still can't save him, I'll let you go. You have my word. The word of a mobster. The word of a Mancini. There was steel behind the words. My father taught me that a man who doesn't honor his word doesn't deserve the name he carries. I've never broken a promise, Dr. Ashford. Never. Vivian drained the wine in one gulp and set the glass on the counter harder than necessary. I'm going to need a sterile surgical suite. Thoracoscopy instruments. O-negative blood. At least 6 units. High-quality anesthetic. And for God's sake, decent lighting. For the first time, something that might have been the ghost of a smile crossed Raphael Mancini's lips. We have all of that. And an assistant who won't vomit when I crack your brother's chest open. The almost smile vanished. I'll be your assistant. Vivian arched an eyebrow. You. Me. The Don of the Mancini family is going to hold retractors while I dig a bullet out of his brother's lung. If necessary. She studied him for a moment. The clenched jaw. The perfectly still hands. The posture of someone who had learned to hide every emotion behind layers of control. But the eyes. The eyes told a different story. Desperation. Pure. Raw. Absolutely human. Vivian knew that look. She'd seen it hundreds of times on the faces of families in the waiting room. The look of someone who would give anything, to save the person they loved. Fine. She grabbed her purse from the couch and walked toward the door. But if you pass out in the middle of surgery, I'm telling all your enemies. Raphael Mancini blinked. It was probably the first time anyone had ever threatened him with gossip. The Mancini estate sat 40 minutes outside Chicago, hidden behind walls that would make a maximum security prison look welcoming. Vivian spent the entire ride in the back seat of an armored SUV, with Raphael beside her in a silence that weighed more than lead. He'd spent the last 20 minutes on the phone, issuing orders in Italian too rapid for her to follow. The only thing she understood was the tone. Controlled. Lethal. The tone of someone holding a volcano inside his chest. When they arrived, Vivian was taken directly to the mansion's basement, which, to her genuine surprise, contained a medical center that rivaled university hospitals. This is state-of-the-art equipment. Raphael removed his jacket and began rolling up his shirt sleeves. My father built this 15 years ago. We have everything a hospital would have, minus the questions. And the bodies? He looked at her. What bodies? The bodies that have certainly passed through this table before. Silence. You ask a lot of questions for someone in your position, Dr. Ashford. And you seem too shocked by that for someone who investigated me extensively, Mr. Mancini. She pulled on surgical gloves and examined the available instruments. Where's my patient? A side door opened. Two men wheeled in a gurney, and Vivienne finally saw the famous younger brother of Raphael Mancini. He was young, absurdly young, dark hair soaked with sweat, skin far too pale, breathing shallow. If it weren't for the blood soaking the improvised bandages, he could have been any college kid coming home from a party. Name? Vivienne asked while connecting the monitors. Matteo. Age? 22. Allergies? None known. Pre-existing conditions? He's healthy as an ox. Raphael's voice cracked slightly. Was. Before. Vivienne raised her hand. I don't need the emotional context. I need medical data. Focus. She looked at the monitor. Pressure dropping. Oxygen saturation dangerously low. Shit. How long since he was shot? 1 hour and 12 minutes. He should be dead. Matteo is stubborn. Vivienne made a sound that might have been a laugh. Apparently it runs in the family. She picked up the scalpel and looked at Raphael. Last chance to back out, Don Mancini. This is going to get ugly. Raphael positioned himself beside the table, hands washed and gloved, eyes fixed on his brother's unconscious face. I've seen things far worse than blood, Dr. Ashford. Vivienne doubted it, but she didn't have time to argue. Then welcome to my operating room. She made the first incision. Rule number 1, when I ask for something, you do it. No questions, no hesitation. In here I'm God. Understood? Raphael Mancini, Don of the Mancini family, one of the most feared men in Chicago's underworld, someone who had probably killed more people than she had saved, nodded in silence. Understood. Vivienne almost smiled. Almost. 3 hours later, the bullet sat in a metal tray and Matteo Mancini was alive. Vivienne stepped back from the table with trembling legs. The adrenaline that had sustained her for the past hours was finally fading, leaving behind nothing but absolute exhaustion and a hangover that was starting to collect its due. He's going to live. She stripped off the blood-soaked gloves. The next 48 hours are critical, but if there's no infection, he'll be fine. Raphael stood beside the gurney, staring at his brother as if he still couldn't believe he was breathing. You did this. I did my job. You saved his life. Again, my job. Vivienne tossed the gloves in the trash and leaned against the counter, trying not to look as exhausted as she felt. Now, about our deal. It will be honored. Raphael finally tore his eyes from his brother and looked at her. By tomorrow morning, the charges against you will have disappeared. The records will be altered. Marcus Webb will be the sole person responsible, and the money he stole will be returned to the hospital from an anonymous source. No one will ever know you were involved. Vivienne should have felt relief. She should have felt gratitude. Instead, she felt only a familiar suspicion. Why do I feel like this is too easy? Raphael Mancini studied her for a long moment, those dark green eyes roaming her face as if cataloging every detail. Because you're intelligent, Dr. Ashford. He took a step forward. And because there's one more thing I need to discuss with you. Here it comes. And what would that be? The Zanettis saw your face. Vivienne's blood ran cold. What? Cameras. Raphael tilted his head slightly. They have cameras all over the city. When my men picked you up, they were certainly being watched. Now the Zanettis know I brought a surgeon to my house and they're going to want to know why. So, what does that mean? It means you've become a target. His voice was almost gentle. Almost. If I send you back to your life now, you'll be dead within a week. Vivienne felt the surgical suite walls closing in around her. You're saying... I'm saying that, at least for now, you'll have to stay here. Raphael made a sweeping gesture around the room. In my home. Under my protection. I'm your prisoner. You're my guest. A guest who can't leave. A guest who will stay alive. His eyes met hers. I don't want your gratitude, Dr. Ashford. I don't want your obedience. I only want you to keep breathing long enough for me to find a permanent solution to the Zanetti problem. And how long does that take? Weeks. Maybe months. Vivienne closed her eyes. 12 hours ago, she was about to lose everything. Career, freedom, dignity. Now she had her career back. Her legal freedom guaranteed. But she was trapped in a mafia don's mansion, target of a war between families, and apparently with no way out. Do you have coffee here? She asked, opening her eyes. Raphael looked genuinely confused by the change of subject. Coffee? Coffee. The beverage, made from roasted beans, usually consumed in the morning, but perfectly acceptable at... She glanced at the clock on the wall. 4 in the morning after a 3-hour cardiothoracic surgery performed while semi-drunk. A muscle in Raphael's jaw twitched. It could have been irritation. It could have been something else. We have coffee. Great. Vivian pushed herself away from the counter and walked toward the door. Show me the kitchen. I'm going to need caffeine to process the level of insanity my life has become. She was almost at the door when his voice reached her. Dr. Ashford. She stopped, turned her head. Raphael Mancini still stood beside his brother, the surgical suite's fluorescent light casting strange shadows across his face. Thank you. The words seemed to cost him something, as if gratitude were a currency he rarely spent. For saving his life. Vivian studied him for a moment. The most dangerous man in Chicago, thanking a half-drunk surgeon he'd kidnapped at gunpoint. Her life really had turned into an absurd comedy. You're welcome. She turned to leave, but stopped again. Oh, and Mr. Mancini? Yes? You didn't vomit or pass out. A tiny smile curved her lips. Not bad for a mobster. She left before she could see his reaction. But if she had stayed, she would have seen something Raphael Mancini's men hadn't witnessed in years. A smile. Small, almost imperceptible, but real, and absolutely dangerous. Vivian woke to the sound of footsteps outside her door. Heavy, measured, the deliberate pace of someone standing guard. For 3 disorienting seconds she had no idea where she was. The bed was too soft. The sheets smelled like lavender and money. The ceiling was at least 12 feet high. Then the memories crashed back. Marcus. The gun. The surgery. The dawn with eyes like a winter storm. She sat up slowly, her body screaming in protest. Every muscle ached from the tension of a 3-hour surgery performed on adrenaline and Cabernet. The room they'd given her was obscenely beautiful. Antique furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking gardens that belonged in a magazine, a bathroom larger than her entire Chicago apartment. A gilded cage was still a cage. Vivian dragged herself out of bed and found clothes laid out on an armchair. Black pants, a white silk blouse, even undergarments. All in her exact size. Creepy, thorough, very on brand for a crime family. She showered, dressed, and opened the bedroom door. 2 men in dark suits stood on either side of the hallway. They turned to face her simultaneously, like synchronized robots programmed for intimidation. Good morning, Dr. Ashford, the one on the left said. Mr. Mancini requested we escort you to breakfast. And if I'd rather explore on my own? Mr. Mancini anticipated that response. The guard's expression didn't change. He said to tell you the East Wing is off limits, the basement requires authorization, and the perimeter is monitored by motion sensors and armed patrols. Vivian stared at him. He really thought of everything. Mr. Mancini always does. Fantastic. She followed the guards through a maze of corridors until they reached a dining room that could comfortably seat 30. At the head of the table sat Raphael Mancini, looking irritatingly well-rested in a charcoal suit, reading something on a tablet. He looked up when she entered. Those dark green eyes tracked her movement with an intensity that made her skin prickle. Dr. Ashford, I trust you slept well. Like a prisoner in a 5-star hotel. She pulled out a chair across from him and sat without waiting for an invitation. The armed guards outside my door were a lovely touch. For your protection. From what? Aggressive breakfast pastries? Something flickered in his expression. Amusement, maybe. Or annoyance. With him, they seemed interchangeable. The Zanettis have a long reach. Until I've assessed the full scope of the threat, precautions are necessary. A woman in a gray uniform appeared and placed a plate in front of Vivienne. Eggs, fresh fruit, toast with actual butter. Her stomach growled traitorously. How's your brother? She asked, picking up a fork. Stable, thanks to you. Raphael set down his tablet. He woke briefly an hour ago. Asked who the angry redhead was. Vivian's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Angry redhead? Apparently you were muttering complaints during the surgery. Something about incompetent men and... If I wanted to spend my night elbow deep in someone's chest cavity, I would have stayed at the hospital. Heat crept up her neck. I talk when I operate. It helps me focus. It certainly made an impression on Matteo. Was that a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth? He wants to meet you properly. I'm sure he does. But right now I need to check his vitals, change his dressings, and make sure he hasn't developed a post-operative infection because someone decided a mansion basement was an appropriate surgical environment. Raphael's almost smile vanished. The facility is sterile. The facility is impressive, Vivian admitted. But it's not a hospital. There are protocols, standards. Things that exist for very good reasons. Those reasons don't apply to my family. Bacteria don't care about your family name, Mr. Mancini. They'll kill a Mancini just as happily as they'll kill anyone else. She stood, abandoning her half-eaten breakfast. Take me to my patient. For a long moment, Raphael didn't move. His eyes held hers in a silent battle of wills that made the air feel thick. Then he rose, buttoning his jacket with precise movements. Follow me. Matteo Mancini was awake, and apparently, consciousness had done nothing to diminish his personality. So you're the one who saved my life, he said when Vivian entered, his voice raspy but unmistakably cheerful. Raph said you were terrifying. He undersold it. Vivian approached the bed, already scanning the monitors. Vitals stable. Oxygen levels good. I'm your doctor. Terrifying is part of the job description. She also threatened to tell my enemies if I passed out during your surgery, Raphael said from the doorway. Matteo's laugh turned into a wince. Ow, don't make me laugh. Everything hurts. That's because you have 3 holes in your body that weren't there 2 days ago. Vivian pulled on gloves and began examining the surgical site. I need you to stay still. This might be uncomfortable. More uncomfortable than getting shot. Different kind of uncomfortable. She peeled back the bandage carefully. The incision looked clean. No signs of infection. You're lucky to be alive, so I've been told. Matteo's eyes, the same dark green as his brother's but warmer somehow, studied her face. Raph said you were about to lose everything. Your career, your freedom. And you still came. I didn't have much choice. There's always a choice. His voice softened. Thank you. Something twisted in Vivian's chest. This wasn't what she'd expected. The younger brother of a mafia don should be harder, colder, not looking at her like she was some kind of hero. Don't thank me yet, she said, keeping her voice professional. You have weeks of recovery ahead. No sudden movements, no stress, and absolutely no getting shot again. I'll do my best. That grin again. So, Doc, are you single? From the doorway, Raphael made a sound that might have been a growl. Vivian didn't miss a beat. I'm your surgeon, and you're high on painkillers. Neither of those things makes this an appropriate conversation. That's not a no. Matteo. Raphael's voice could have frozen fire. Enough. What? I'm just being friendly. She saved my life. The least I can do is rest. Vivian finished rebandaging the wound and stepped back. The least you can do is rest, let your body heal, and stop flirting with medical professionals while you're still connected to a morphine drip. Matteo clutched his chest dramatically. The uninjured side. You wound me, Doc. I literally just finished stitching you up. Don't tempt me to undo my work. This time, when Matteo laughed, he didn't seem to care about the pain. Raphael was waiting in the hallway when she emerged. My brother likes you, he said, falling into step beside her. Your brother is heavily medicated. He's also an excellent judge of character. Raphael's shoulder brushed hers as they walked. Even when he's being inappropriate. Is that an apology? An observation? He stopped at a window overlooking the grounds. In the morning light, the gardens looked almost peaceful, almost normal. If you ignored the armed men patrolling the perimeter. Matteo has always been lighter than me, than our father. He sees good in people. And you don't? Those winter storm eyes turned to her. I see what's useful, what's dangerous, what needs to be eliminated. A pause. And occasionally, what surprises me. Vivian refused to look away. Which category do I fall into? I haven't decided yet. The honesty was somehow more unsettling than a threat would have been. Well, she said, while you're deciding, I'll be keeping your brother alive. That's my job now, apparently. Since I can't leave, you'll have everything you need. What I need is my freedom. What you need is to stay alive. He started walking again, and she had no choice but to follow. Once the Zanetti situation is resolved, you'll be free to go. Until then, I'm your prisoner. Raphael stopped, turned. His face was unreadable. Until then, he said quietly, you're under my protection. There's a difference, Dr. Ashford, whether you believe it or not. He walked away before she could respond. Vivian stood in the empty corridor, sunlight streaming through the windows, surrounded by luxury and armed guards and the lingering scent of his cologne. Protection, she thought bitterly. Is that what we're calling it now? But somewhere beneath the anger, beneath the fear and the exhaustion and the absurdity of it all, a small voice whispered something dangerous. He could have let you die. He didn't. She silenced it immediately. She wasn't going to start sympathizing with her captor. That was a line she refused to cross. No matter how human he'd looked, standing over his brother's unconscious body, willing her to save him. End of chapter 2. Next chapter. Vivian discovers the Mancini family isn't what she expected. A grandmother who rules with an iron fist, secrets buried in the mansion's walls, and a late-night encounter that proves Raphael Mancini might be more dangerous to her heart than to her life. 3 days into her captivity, Vivian met the real ruler of the Mancini empire. She was in the medical suite, checking Matteo's lung capacity with a portable spirometer, when the door swung open without warning. The woman who entered was small, barely 5 feet tall, silver hair pulled back in an elegant chignon, a black dress that probably cost more than Vivian's medical school tuition, and eyes, dark, sharp, terrifying, that swept the room like a general surveying a battlefield. Behind her, 2 guards stood at attention as if the Queen of England had arrived. So, the woman's voice was accented, Italian, old world, dripping with authority. "This is the surgeon who saved my grandson." Matteo attempted to sit up straighter and immediately winced. "Nonna, you shouldn't be down here. The doctor said I should rest. The doctors are idiots." She waved a dismissive hand and walked directly to Vivian, studying her with unsettling intensity. "You, look at me." Vivian looked. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Vivian had stared down armed men, arrogant colleagues, and her own mortality. But this tiny woman with her perfectly manicured nails and designer dress was somehow more intimidating than all of them combined. "You have steady eyes," the woman finally said. "Good. I don't trust people who can't hold a gaze." She extended her hand, not for a handshake, but palm down, like royalty expecting tribute. "I am Donna Elisabetta Mancini. You may call me Mrs. Mancini." Vivian shook the offered hand, adjusting for the odd angle. "Dr. Vivian Ashford. I know who you are. I know everything that happens in this house." Elisabetta's grip was surprisingly strong. "I also know you threatened to gossip about my grandson to his enemies. Bold, stupid. I like it." From the bed, Matteo groaned. "Nonna, please don't interrogate my doctor." "I'm not interrogating. I'm assessing." Elisabetta released Vivian's hand and circled her slowly, like a shark evaluating prey. "Raphael says you operated for 3 hours without rest, that you didn't flinch when Matteo's heart stopped for 40 seconds, that you insulted him repeatedly while saving his brother's life." Vivian blinked. "His heart stopped? You didn't notice?" "I noticed. I just didn't realize he'd mentioned it to anyone." She glanced toward the door, half expecting Raphael to materialize. The flatline was brief. "I handled it." "Yes, you did." Elisabetta stopped in front of her. "My husband built this family from nothing. My son expanded it into an empire. My grandson, Raphael." She paused, something softening in her expression. "Raphael carries it all on his shoulders. He trusts no one, lets no one close. And yet he brought you into our home. He didn't give me much choice. Raphael never gives choices. He gives opportunities disguised as demands." The old woman's eyes glittered. "The question is whether you're smart enough to recognize the difference." Before Vivian could respond, Elisabetta turned and walked toward the door. "Dinner is at 7. Dress appropriately. You'll be joining the family." "I'm not family." Elisabetta paused at the threshold. When she looked back, her smile was knife-sharp. "Not yet." She left without another word. Matteo let out a long breath. "Congratulations, Doc. You survived, Nonna. Most people cry." Vivian stared at the empty doorway. What did she mean? Not yet. With Nonna? Could mean anything. He grinned weakly. Or everything. "Welcome to the Mancini family. Hope you like drama." Dinner was a battlefield disguised as a meal. The dining room had been transformed. Candles, fresh flowers, china that probably belonged in a museum. Around the table sat a collection of people Vivian hadn't yet met. Cousins, underbosses, advisors, all watching her with varying degrees of curiosity and suspicion. Raphael sat at the head, with Elisabetta at his right. They'd placed Vivienne at his left. Subtle, she thought bitterly. Very subtle. The conversation flowed in a mixture of English and Italian, discussing business matters in coded language that Vivienne couldn't fully decipher. Shipments, territories, names that meant nothing to her, but made others at the table shift uncomfortably. Then someone mentioned the Zanettis. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. "They hit another warehouse last night," said a heavyset man with a scar across his jaw. "Third one this month. We're bleeding money, Raphael. Money can be recovered." Raphael's voice was calm. controlled. What matters is the message. They tried to kill my brother. That cannot go unanswered. Then let us answer it. This from a younger man. Sharp features, hungry eyes. We know where Enzo Zanetti's daughter goes to school. One move and... No! The single word silenced the table. Raphael set down his fork with deliberate precision. We don't touch children. We don't touch innocence. That's not who we are. It's who they are, the young man pressed. They shot Matteo. An eye for an eye. Matteo is a soldier. He knew the risks. Raphael's eyes could have cut glass. A child did not choose this life. We will not punish her for her father's sins. He looked around the table slowly. Is that understood? Silence. Then, reluctantly, nods. Vivienne found herself staring at Raphael with something dangerously close to respect. He caught her gaze across the table, held it for a moment that stretched too long, then looked away. We'll discuss alternative strategies tomorrow, he said. For now, let's not bore our guest with business. The rest of dinner passed in tense small talk. Vivienne answered questions about her career, her education, carefully avoiding any mention of Marcus or the false charges. When the meal finally ended, she escaped to the gardens, desperate for fresh air. The night was cool. Stars scattered across the sky like spilled diamonds. She found a bench near a fountain and sat, letting the sound of water drown out her racing thoughts. You shouldn't be out here alone. She didn't turn. She'd learned to recognize his footsteps. Your guards are watching from the terrace. I'm hardly alone. Raphael emerged from the shadows and sat beside her. He'd removed his jacket, rolled up his sleeves. In the moonlight, he looked almost normal. You looked uncomfortable at dinner, he said. I was surrounded by people discussing how to wage a war against another crime family. Uncomfortable seems like an understatement. You also looked surprised. Vivienne turned to face him. You stopped them from going after the daughter. Of course I did. Why, of course? From everything I've read about your world. What you've read. Something flickered in his expression. Newspapers. Crime reports. Fiction written by people who've never lived this life. He leaned back, staring up at the stars. My father had rules, lines he wouldn't cross. When he died, some people expected me to erase those lines, to become the monster they think I should be. And I chose differently. His voice was quiet. There's enough darkness in this life without adding to it unnecessarily. I won't pretend to be a good man, Dr. Ashford, but I refuse to become an evil one. Vivienne studied his profile, the sharp jaw, the tension in his shoulders, the weariness he hid from everyone else. Why are you telling me this? He turned his head. Their eyes met. Because you've been looking at me like I'm a monster since you arrived. And while I don't care what most people think, he paused. For some reason I find that I care what you think. The admission hung in the air between them. Vivienne's heart was beating too fast. This was dangerous. This was the exact opposite of what she should be feeling. You kidnapped me, she said, her voice steady even as her pulse raced. At gunpoint. I saved your life. You imprisoned me in your house. I'm protecting you from people who would do far worse. She stopped, took a breath. You can't just say things like that. About caring what I think. We're not, this isn't what? She didn't have an answer. Raphael stood slowly, looked down at her with those winter storm eyes. Get some sleep, Dr. Ashford. Matteo's recovery will require your full attention. He started to walk away, then paused. And for what it's worth, the way you handled my grandmother tonight was impressive. She's already planning our wedding. What? But he was gone, disappearing into the mansion's shadows, leaving Vivienne alone with the stars and a growing suspicion that Raphael Mancini was far more dangerous to her than any rival family could ever be. Not because he might kill her, but because she was starting to see him as human. The scream woke Vivienne at 2 a.m. She was out of bed before her brain fully registered what was happening. Medical instincts overriding common sense. She grabbed the robe they'd provided and ran into the hallway. Guards were everywhere, running, shouting. The organized calm of the Mancini estate had shattered into chaos. What's happening? She demanded, grabbing the arm of a passing guard. Stay in your room, Dr. Ashford. Mr. Mancini's orders. I'm a doctor. If someone's hurt. Dr. Ashford. Raphael's voice cut through the noise. He appeared at the end of the corridor, his white shirt stained with something dark. Blood. Come with me. Now. She didn't argue. They moved through the mansion at a pace just short of running. Raphael's jaw was clenched so tight she could see the muscles straining beneath his skin. What happened? The Zanettis sent us a message. What kind of message? He didn't answer, just pushed open the doors to the main foyer. Vivienne stopped breathing. A man lay on the marble floor surrounded by guards and blood. So much blood. His face was swollen beyond recognition. His hands, God, his hands were wrong, bent at angles that made her stomach lurch. But he was alive, barely. His chest rose and fell in shallow, desperate gasps. They left him at the gate, Raphael said, his voice terrifyingly calm. With a note pinned to his chest, Vivienne forced herself to move, to kneel beside the broken man and assess the damage with clinical detachment. Multiple fractures, facial trauma, internal bleeding probably, shock setting in. I need him in the medical suite. Now. She looked up at Raphael. Who is he? Something cracked in his expression. Just for a moment. His name is Paolo. He's been with my family for 20 years. He has a wife, 2 daughters. Raphael's hands curled into fists at his sides. He was on a routine patrol. They took him 3 days ago. 3 days. They'd had this man for 3 days and done this. The suite, Vivienne repeated. I can't help him here. Raphael nodded sharply. Men moved. Within minutes, Paolo was on a gurney, being wheeled toward the basement. Vivienne worked. She worked for 4 hours straight, stabilizing what she could, setting bones, stopping bleeds. Paolo drifted in and out of consciousness, sometimes screaming, sometimes eerily silent. The whole time, Raphael watched from the corner. He didn't speak, didn't move, just watched with those winter storm eyes that had gone completely flat, empty. When Vivienne finally stepped back, her scrubs soaked with another man's blood, she felt hollow. He'll live, she said quietly. But his hands, she couldn't finish the sentence. They knew. Raphael's voice was barely a whisper. Paolo played piano, every Sunday for his daughters. They knew, and he stopped, took a breath. When he spoke again, his voice was controlled. Dead. What did the note say? One of the guards produced a blood-stained piece of paper. Raphael read it once. His expression didn't change. He handed it to Vivienne. 4 words written in elegant script. The surgeon is next. The paper trembled in her hands. They know about me. They know about you. Vivienne looked at the unconscious man on the table, at the destroyed hands, at the evidence of calculated, methodical cruelty. Is this, she swallowed, is this what they'll do to me? Raphael crossed the room in 3 strides. His hands gripped her shoulders, firm but not painful. His eyes burned into hers. Listen to me carefully, Dr. Ashford. They will never touch you. Do you understand? I will burn their entire organization to the ground before I let them lay a single finger on you. Why? The question escaped before she could stop it. You barely know me. Why would you? Because you saved my brother's life. Because you didn't run when you could have. Because you looked at my grandmother without flinching and threatened to gossip about me in the same breath as agreeing to perform surgery. His grip tightened slightly. And because I protect what's mine. I'm not yours. You're under my protection. In my world, that's close enough. They stood there, inches apart, his hands on her shoulders, her heart pounding against her ribs. The air between them felt electric, dangerous. Vivienne stepped back. His hands fell away. I need to clean up, she said, her voice steadier than she felt, and sleep. If I'm going to be any use to Paolo, or anyone else, I need to be functional. Raphael nodded slowly. I'll have guards posted outside your door. More guards? As many as it takes. She walked toward the door, then paused, turned back. Raphael. It was the first time she'd used his first name. Something shifted in his expression. Yes? What are you going to do? About the Zanettis? For a long moment he didn't answer. When he did, his voice was quiet, certain, terrifying. What I should have done from the beginning. He looked at Paolo's unconscious form. I tried to be measured, strategic. I thought I could end this without becoming my father. Without becoming the monster they expect. His eyes met hers. I was wrong. Raphael. Go to sleep, Vivienne. Her name in his mouth sounded different. Intimate. Tomorrow things change, and I'd rather you not see what comes next. She wanted to argue, to tell him that violence only bred more violence, that revenge wouldn't heal Paolo's hands or bring back the life the man had lost. But she looked at his face, at the grief and rage barely contained beneath the surface, and realized that nothing she said would matter. This was his world, his rules, his war. And she was just a surgeon caught in the crossfire. Sleep didn't come. Vivian lay in bed staring at the ceiling, unable to close her eyes without seeing Paolo's destroyed hands, without imagining her own hands bent and broken, without hearing the echo of Raphael's voice. I will burn their entire organization to the ground. At 5 a.m., she gave up and went to the medical suite. Paolo was awake. His eyes, the only part of his face not swollen shut, tracked her movement as she entered. "You're the doctor," he rasped. "The one thereafter." Vivian checked his IV. "How are you feeling?" "Like I was beaten for 3 days. A ghost of a smile crossed his ruined lips. "Stupid question, Doc." Despite everything, Vivian almost laughed. "Fair enough. Can you tell me where the pain is worst?" "Everywhere. But mostly," he glanced down at his bandaged hands. "They made me watch. While they did it, made me count each bone as they broke it." Vivian's stomach turned. "You don't have to talk about it." "I want to." His voice cracked. "I want someone to know what they are, the Zanettis. They smiled, Doc. Smiled while they destroyed everything He stopped. Breathed. "I'll never play for my girls again." "Paolo, I want you to know something." His eyes found hers. Held them. "Don Raphael. He's not like them. I've served this family my whole life. Seen 3 generations. Raphael, he's different. Better. Don't let this life make you think otherwise." Vivian didn't know what to say. "He came to my wife himself," Paolo continued. "Told her what happened. Promised to take care of our girls' education. Their futures, everything." A tear slid down his swollen cheek. "That's not a monster, Doc. That's a man carrying more weight than anyone should bear." The door opened behind her. She didn't need to turn to know who it was. "Paolo." Raphael's voice was soft. "You should be resting." "I've rested enough, Don Raphael. 3 days in a Zanetti basement gave me plenty of time to think." The broken man tried to sit up. Failed. "Whatever you're planning, make it hurt. For me, for my hands, for my daughters who'll never hear me play again." Raphael walked to the bedside, placed his hand gently on Paolo's shoulder. "I give you my word," he said quietly. "They will pay for every bone, every bruise, every moment of pain." Paolo closed his eyes. "Then I can rest." Within moments, he was asleep. Raphael stood there looking down at the man his enemies had destroyed to send a message. When he finally turned to Vivienne, his expression was unreadable. "Now you've seen it," he said. "The reality of my world. Not newspaper headlines, not rumors. The actual cost. Yes. Does it change how you see me? Knowing what I'm about to do?" Vivian thought about Paolo's hands, about his daughters, about the note with her name written in implication. "I think," she said slowly, "that I'm starting to understand that nothing in your world is simple." Raphael studied her for a long moment. "No," he agreed. "Nothing ever is." He left without another word, and Vivian sat with the sleeping man, wondering when exactly she'd stopped seeing Raphael Mancini as her captor and started seeing him as something far more complicated, far more dangerous, and far more human than she'd ever wanted him to be. The mansion felt different after Paolo. Quieter, heavier, like the whole building was holding its breath. Vivian hadn't seen Raphael in 2 days. He'd vanished into meetings behind closed doors, emerging only briefly, always surrounded by men with hard eyes and harder expressions. Whatever he was planning, it was big, and she wasn't part of it, which was fine. Good even. She was a surgeon, not a soldier. Her job was to keep Paolo alive, monitor Matteo's recovery, and count the days until this nightmare ended. Except the days had stopped feeling like a countdown. Somewhere between the late-night conversation in the garden and the moment Raphael had gripped her shoulders in the medical suite, something had shifted. The walls she'd built were developing cracks. Dangerous cracks. She was in the library, a stunning 2-story room filled with first editions and leather furniture, when the door opened. "Dr. Ashford, we haven't been properly introduced." The man who entered was handsome in an obvious way. Dark hair, designer suit, smile that belonged in a toothpaste commercial. He moved with the easy confidence of someone who'd never been told no. "I'm Vincent," he said, extending his hand. "Raphael's cousin. I've heard fascinating things about you." Vivian shook his hand carefully, such as, "That you're brilliant, brave, and apparently immune to my cousin's intimidation tactics." He settled into the chair across from her. "That last part is particularly impressive. Most people wet themselves in Raphael's presence. Most people haven't performed emergency surgery at gunpoint." Vincent laughed. It was a pleasant sound, but something about it felt rehearsed. I also heard about the threat, he said, his smile fading. The Zanettis targeting you specifically, that must be terrifying. I'm handling it. Are you? He leaned forward. Because from where I'm sitting, you're trapped in this house surrounded by guards waiting for my cousin to either win his war or get you killed in the crossfire. Vivienne's eyes narrowed. What exactly are you suggesting? Vincent glanced at the door, lowered his voice. I have contacts, people who owe me favors. I could get you out of here tonight. New identity, new city, new life. The Zanettis would never find you. The offer hung in the air like a lifeline. Freedom. Real freedom. Not the gilded cage of the Mancini estate, but actual autonomy. She could disappear, start over, forget any of this ever happened. Forget Raphael's eyes in the moonlight. Forget the way he'd said her name like it meant something. Forget. Why would you help me? She asked. Because you don't belong here. Vincent's expression softened. You're a doctor, not a criminal. You got pulled into this mess through no fault of your own. I'm offering you a way out. And what do you want in return? Something flickered in his eyes, gone before she could identify it. Nothing. Consider it a good deed. Vivienne had survived medical school, residency, and a cheating fiancé who'd nearly destroyed her career. She knew when someone was hiding something. I'll think about it, she said carefully. Don't think too long. Vincent stood. Raphael's moving against the Zanettis tomorrow night. After that, things get complicated. He paused at the door. Sometimes the smartest choice is to run, Dr. Ashford, before it's too late. He left. Vivienne sat in the library for a long time, staring at the books she couldn't read, thinking about choices she didn't want to make. She found Matteo in the garden that evening. He was sitting on the same bench where she'd talked with Raphael, his face lifted to the sunset. The color had returned to his cheeks. He looked almost healthy. Doc, he smiled when he saw her. Come to check my vitals? Come to check your judgment. She sat beside him. You shouldn't be outside. Your lung is still healing. I've been inside for weeks. If I don't see the sky soon, I'll lose my mind. He patted the bench. Sit. Watch the sunset with me, doctor's orders. I'm the doctor. Then you know how important mental health is. She sat. They watched the sky turn orange, then pink, then purple. It was peaceful, almost normal. Vincent talked to you, Matteo said finally. Vivienne went still. How do you know? Because Vincent always talks, usually about things he shouldn't. Matteo turned to look at her. What did he offer? A way out. And what did he ask for? Nothing. Matteo laughed. A bitter sound. Nothing like his usual warmth. Vincent never offers anything for nothing. He's been jealous of Raphael since we were children, always looking for angles, advantages, ways to undermine. He paused. If he's offering to help you escape, it's because hurting Raphael is worth more to him than whatever it costs. Why would my leaving hurt Raphael? Matteo's eyes met hers. Knowing. Too knowing. You really don't see it, do you? See what? My brother hasn't left his study in 2 days. He's barely eating. He's planning the most dangerous operation of his life, and the only time I've seen him show any emotion is when someone mentions your name. Matteo shook his head. Raphael doesn't get attached, Doc. Ever. Our father trained that out of him. But you? Vivienne's heart was pounding. I'm just his brother's surgeon. You're the first person in years who's talked to him like a human being instead of a don. Matteo's voice softened. You insulted him, challenged him, refused to be afraid of him, and instead of killing you, he moved heaven and earth to protect you. He's protecting an asset. I saved your life. He feels obligated. Raphael doesn't do obligation. He does strategy. Matteo reached out, touched her hand gently. And keeping you here, in his home, under his personal protection. That's not strategy, Doc. That's something else entirely. Vivienne pulled her hand back. You don't know what you're talking about. I know my brother. Matteo stood slowly, wincing slightly. And I know that look in his eyes. I've never seen it before, but I know what it means. He started walking back toward the mansion. Don't break his heart, Doc. It's the only one he's got, and he's already given you more of it than you realize. He disappeared inside. Vivienne sat alone as darkness fell, her thoughts spinning in circles. Freedom, safety, a new life, or this, whatever this was. Raphael found her at midnight. She was still in the garden, wrapped in a blanket she'd grabbed from the library, staring at stars she couldn't name. You'll catch cold. His voice came from the shadows before he did. I've survived worse. He emerged into the moonlight. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, stubble shadowing his jaw, his usually immaculate appearance worn around the edges. I heard Vincent spoke with you. Of course he had. Nothing happened in this house without him knowing. He offered me an escape. Raphael sat beside her. Not close, but not far. And I told him I'd think about it. Silence. If you want to leave, Raphael said quietly, I won't stop you. Vivian turned to look at him. What? I've been keeping you here telling myself it was for your protection. And it was. Is. He rubbed a hand over his face. But it's also selfish. Having you here, seeing you every day, knowing you're safe within these walls. He met her eyes. I don't have the right to keep you somewhere you don't want to be. You're giving me a choice? I'm giving you what I should have given you from the beginning. Vivian studied his face. The exhaustion, the vulnerability he rarely showed. The man beneath the dawn. Why now? Because tomorrow night I'm ending this war. One way or another. His voice was steady, resigned. If things go wrong, I don't want you trapped here. I want you free, safe, living the life you deserve. And if things go right? He looked at her with those winter storm eyes, and for the first time she saw something warm in them, something terrifying. If things go right, he said softly, I'll ask you to stay. Not as a prisoner, not as a guest, but as... He stopped, shook his head. It doesn't matter. You should go with Vincent. Start over. Forget any of this happened. He stood to leave. Vivian grabbed his hand. He froze. I'm not going anywhere, she said. Vivian, I don't trust Vincent. I don't want to run, and I don't... She took a breath. I don't want to forget. Raphael looked down at their joined hands. When he looked back up, something had changed in his expression. You should want to forget. Probably. She stood, still holding his hand. But I've spent my whole life doing what I should, playing it safe, following the rules. And where did it get me? Betrayed, framed, alone. I'm not safe, Vivian. I know. This life isn't safe. I know. Then why? Because you could have let me die. You didn't. She stepped closer. You could have used me and discarded me. You didn't. You could have been the monster everyone expects. You weren't. I'm not a good man. Maybe not. She was close enough to see the pulse jumping in his throat. But you're not the monster you think you are either. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then Raphael's free hand rose, slowly, carefully, and cupped her face. If you stay, he murmured, I won't be able to let you go. Then don't. He kissed her, and the stars above witnessed what neither of them was ready to name. The night of the assault, Vivian couldn't sleep. She stood at her window, watching the convoy of black SUVs disappear down the driveway. Raphael was in the lead vehicle. She'd watched him leave, his face carved from stone, his goodbye nothing more than a lingering look that said everything he couldn't put into words. Come back to me. She hadn't said it out loud. Neither had he, but they'd both heard it anyway. Matteo found her in the medical suite at 3 a.m., preparing supplies she prayed she wouldn't need. He's going to be fine, Matteo said, though his voice lacked conviction. You don't know that. I know my brother. He survived worse. Vivian arranged surgical instruments with trembling hands. This is different. The Zanettis know he's coming. Vincent's been handled. Matteo's expression darkened. Raphael's men intercepted him trying to contact the Zanettis 2 hours ago. Turns out his generous offer to help you escape was part of a larger plan to deliver you directly to our enemies. Vivian's blood ran cold. What? The Zanettis offered him control of our territory in exchange for information about Raphael's plans. You were just a bonus. Matteo's jaw tightened. He's currently in the basement, reconsidering his life choices. She should have felt shocked, horrified. Instead, she felt only a grim satisfaction. Good. Matteo almost smiled. You're adapting to this life faster than I expected. I'm adapting to survive. She met his eyes. There's a difference. Is there? Before she could answer, the sound of tires on gravel cut through the silence. They were back. Vivian ran. Through corridors, downstairs, across the foyer. She burst through the front doors just as the SUVs pulled up, their headlights cutting through the darkness. Men poured out, some wounded, some carrying others. The smell of gunpowder and blood filled the air. And then she saw him. Raphael emerged from the lead vehicle, supported by 2 of his men. His white shirt was soaked red. His face was pale, but he was walking. He was alive. Medical suite. Now. Vivian's voice snapped into command mode. Everyone with injuries, follow me. Minor wounds wait outside. Critical cases first. She worked for hours. Bullet extractions. Wound closures. A collapsed lung that required emergency intervention. 3 men lost too much blood. She saved 2 of them. Raphael refused treatment until every one of his men had been seen. Stubborn idiot, Vivian muttered as she finally got him on a table near dawn. You could have bled out. I've had worse. That's not comforting. She cut away his ruined shirt, revealing a gash across his ribs. Deep, but not fatal. This needs stitches. Then stitch. She worked in silence, her hands steady despite the exhaustion. When she finished, she didn't step back. Couldn't. The Zanettis? She asked quietly. Done. His voice was flat, tired. Enzo Zanetti is dead. His organization is scattered. Those who survived have agreed to terms. What kind of terms? The kind that ensure they never threaten my family again. He caught her hand before she could pull away. It's over, Vivian. You're safe. She looked at their joined hands, at the blood still staining his skin. Are you? Am I what? Safe. From this life, from what it costs. Raphael was quiet for a long moment. I'll never be safe, he said finally. This world doesn't allow for safety, but I can build something worth protecting. Something worth fighting for. His thumb traced circles on her palm. Someone worth coming home to. Vivian's heart clenched. I don't know if I can be what you need. You already are. He tugged her closer until she was standing between his knees, her hands on his shoulders. You see me, Vivian. Not the Don, not the reputation. Me, the man underneath all of it. That man kidnapped me at gunpoint. That man was desperate to save his brother, and terrified of losing the only family he had left. A ghost of a smile. Also, you were very drunk and throwing things. I was concerned for your safety. I was throwing things at pictures of my cheating ex-fiancé. I know. I would have helped, but we were on a schedule. Despite everything, the exhaustion, the fear, the chaos of the night, Vivienne laughed, and Raphael's smile became real. Stay with me, he said softly. Not because you have to. Not because it's safe outside. Although it is now. Stay because you want to. I'm a surgeon. I have a career. A life. We have hospitals. I own 3 of them. Legitimate ones. His eyes sparkled. You could save lives without worrying about funding cuts or bureaucracy. Or you could build something new. A clinic, a research center, whatever you want. You'd do that for me? I'd do anything for you. The humor faded from his expression, replaced by something raw, vulnerable. I love you, Vivian. I didn't plan to. Didn't want to. Love is weakness in my world. But you, he shook his head. You're the strongest thing that's ever happened to me. Vivian stared at him. This man, this impossible, infuriating, terrifying man who had invaded her apartment, upended her life, and somehow shown her more honesty and protection than anyone she'd ever known. I'm going to regret this, she murmured. Probably. Your grandmother is already planning our wedding. She's had the venue booked for 3 weeks. Your brother flirts with me constantly. I'll have him shot. Raphael, only a little. She kissed him, and in that kiss was everything neither of them could say. Fear and hope, past and future, the darkness they'd survived and the light they'd found in each other. When they finally broke apart, Raphael pressed his forehead to hers. Is that a yes? That's a yes. 1 year later, the Mancini estate had never looked more beautiful. White flowers cascaded from every surface. Crystal chandeliers caught the afternoon sunlight, scattering rainbows across the walls. 300 guests filled the gardens, their laughter and conversation creating a symphony of celebration. But Vivienne noticed none of it. She only saw him. Raphael stood at the altar, his black suit immaculate, his dark green eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her knees weak. She walked toward him on Matteo's arm, fully recovered, grinning like an idiot, whispering completely inappropriate commentary about married life. You know, Doc, if this doesn't work out, I'm still available. I will end you. See? You're already thinking like a Mancini. She reached the altar. Matteo kissed her cheek and placed her hand in his brother's. And for a moment, the world went silent. Hi, Raphael murmured. Hi yourself. You look, if you say adequate, I'm leaving. That rare, real smile crossed his face. I was going to say, like everything I never knew I needed. Better. The ceremony was beautiful, elegant. Everything Elisabetta had demanded and more. But the moment Vivian would remember forever came later. During their first dance, when Raphael held her close and whispered against her ear, "Thank you. For what? For staying when you could have run, for seeing me when everyone else sees a monster, for saving Matteo, for saving me." He pulled back slightly, meeting her eyes. "For choosing this life, choosing me." Vivienne thought about the night they'd met. The gun, the fear, the impossible surgery that had started everything. She thought about Paolo's hands, slowly healing, learning to play simple melodies again. About Matteo, dancing with 3 women simultaneously across the room. About Elisabetta, dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief while pretending she wasn't crying. She thought about the darkness she'd witnessed and the light she'd found. "I didn't choose this life," she said softly. "This life chose me. I just decided to stay." "Any regrets?" Vivienne looked at her husband, this man of shadows and steel who had somehow become her home. Not a single one. Outside, fireworks exploded across the night sky, and Dr. Vivienne Mancini kissed her husband while their family cheered, knowing that whatever came next, they would face it together, in blood and belonging, forever. The end.